Gloria in excelsis Deo. Merry Christmas, everybody. Welcome to Rocky. We're so glad that you're here. Let's sing out together. Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Christ the Lord. Sing choirs of angels. Oh, sing choirs of angels, sing in exaltation. Oh, sing all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God, all glory in the highest. Oh, come, let us adore. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. In excelsis angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? What the gladsome tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song? Gloria in excelsis Deo. Come to Bethlehem and see him whose birth the angels sing. Come adore on bended knee, Christ the Lord, the newborn King. In excelsis Deo. Gloria Well, again, Merry Christmas. We're so glad that you guys are all here. Welcome to Rocky. Turn to somebody next to you and ask them if they prefer colored lights or white lights. Well, let's keep singing together. Sing Hark the Herald. The herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Glory to the King. Glory to the newborn. Christ by highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord. In time, behold him come, offspring of a virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead seen, hail the incarnate deity. Pleased as men with men to dwell, Jesus our Emmanuel. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Glory to the King. Glory to the newborn King. Glory to the King. Glory to the newborn. The head-born Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. While he lays his glory by, born that men no more may die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Hark the herald angels sing, glory sing. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs implore, while fields and floods, rocks, hills and plains, repeat the sounding joy. We repeat the sounding joy. And makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. Oh, 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 oh. Adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. All your works with joy surround you. Earth and heaven reflect your rays. Stars and angels sing around you, center of unbroken praise. Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, opening to the sun above. Oh, 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 joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing.
The stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. And long lay the world in sin and ever pining, till he appeared, and the soul His gospel is peace, and chains shall He break, for the slave is our brother, and in His name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus praise we, let all within us praise His holy name. Christ is the Lord. Oh, praise His name forever. His power and glory evermore proclaim. His power and glory evermore proclaim.
Merry Christmas. Good to be with you. Go ahead and grab a seat. If you're in the room, want to say hey to everybody who's hanging out with us online. If you don't know me, my name is Matt, and I'm one of the pastors on staff. Here's the deal. So good to have you here on our Christmas Eve services. And if you're a guest, or if you're visiting with us, man, we're just, man, of all the places you could be, right now, and we know Christmas Eve's a big deal, and so to spend it, at least a part of it with us, we are humbled and honored. So, man, we're just excited that you are here. And here's the deal. We would love for you to come back and see us after this service at a later date. The next 2 Sundays, we're online, okay? So we're online tomorrow. We're online next Sunday as well, so you can check us out online. But then after that, getting into the new year, we love to have you come back. So you just got to know, you're invited. We're going to be starting a new teaching series on the idea of grit. And so we'd like to, just invite you to come back and hang out with us. And you just got to know you're always, always, always welcome. When I'm hanging out in the community, people will ask me, especially people who aren't part of our church, they'll say, hey, what's Rocky all about? Like, what's your mission, or what's like the most important thing for you guys? And I always kind of answer the same way. I say, well, our mission at Rocky, and it's actually out in our lobby, it's to know Jesus and love like Him. That's what we're all about, which means we're a group of people that are like-minded about Jesus. And because of that, we just feel like we should live in a different way that has a lot to do with the idea of love. We're just a church, man, that really wants to love people well, and love our schools well, love our community well, and love our business leaders well. We want to be the kind of church that, we hope this never happens, but we want to be the kind of church that if one day we had to close down, people in our community would actually be bummed. That's the kind of church that we want to be. And so just so you know, at the end of this service, we're going to take up our Christmas offering. If you're a partner here, we want to encourage you to be a part of that. If you're a guest, if you're visiting with us, man, there's no pressure to put anything in those buckets on the way out after service. We just got to know that all of our generosity of our church, it goes towards helping fuel and kind of move our mission forward, and we take that pretty seriously around here. But either way, man, we're just glad you're here, and there's just something about Christmas. It just draws us in, right? Just draws us in, and just real quick, just humor me a little bit. If you get into Christmas, just make some noise right now. If you get into Christmas, yeah, see? There's just something about it. Here's the deal. If you've got Christmas lights on your house right now, make some noise. You got some Christmas lights on your house? That's pretty good. Yeah, me too. That's pretty good. If you like eggnog, make some noise right now. If you like eggnog, yeah. About 3/4 of the room. Some of you haven't figured it out yet. Okay, here's the deal. How many of you like eggnog with something a little in it? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm talking about cinnamon, of course. Cinnamon. It's really good. Okay, how many of you have all your Christmas shopping all done? You're all done? Good. Okay, You're in church now, you know, so you got to be honest, but how many of you still got a gift or two to buy? Make some noise just real quick. Yeah. I'm going to keep it short for you today, okay? So you can get out there and finish it up. Here's the thing. Here's why, listen, I love all these things that come with Christmas and, you know, the lights and the presents and just, you know, spending time with friends and family. But here's the deal. This is what we got to be careful of as a church. You know, we've been talking about this last couple of weeks, that you can get so wrapped up. Get it wrapped? That was a joke. You should laugh. Okay, anyway. Okay, fine. You can get so wrapped up in all that stuff, and it's good stuff, that if you're not careful, though, you can miss the most important thing. And so here's what I want to encourage you. Now, you know, people are here for a variety of different reasons, but you're here, you know? And I want to encourage you over the next 30 minutes to really lean in, because here's what we believe as a church, that 2,000 years ago, a baby was born. Here's the cool thing. The world can't seem to forget about it. And as a church, we never want to stop talking about it. So with all the cool things that come with Christmas, what a shame it would be if we miss the most important thing. So that's what we're going to talk about here in just a couple of minutes. But before we do, the band's got this song that I just think the lyrics, they just remind us, oh yeah, that's right. This is why we do what we do. This is why all of us are gathered in the room. I mean, there's like 700 of us in here that are gathered, you know, in this auditorium because something happened a couple thousand years ago, 7,000 miles away. Isn't that crazy? And here we are. So what a shame it would be if we didn't talk about it and think about it and maybe even ask the question, how should it affect us this Christmas season? Here's what I want you to do. Sit back, relax, enjoy this next song. Take a look at the lyrics and see if they speak to you this Christmas.
Behold, the King has come, divinity incarnate, creator of the world, breathing our air. Behold, what light has come, in the dark and not contained. The Savior of the world is finally here. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Come, let us adore Him. For He alone is worthy. Christ
Behold the Father's love beyond the us adore Him. Come, let us adore Him. For He alone is worthy. Christ the Lord. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Come, let us adore Him. For He alone is worthy. Christ the Lord. He is Christ the Lord. He is Christ the Lord.
Yeah. So good. Hey, again, it's good to be together on this Christmas Eve. And here's the deal. I want to do something a little bit different, because usually this is, preacher gets up here and he's going to start preaching at you. And here's what I want to do today. This Christmas Eve, I just want to have a conversation with you, because I realize most of you here have probably heard the Christmas story before. Maybe not all, but a lot of you have heard the Christmas story before. And we're going to get into the Christmas story here in just a second. But here's the thing I want to talk about. So if you're ever wondering, like, I wonder what the pastor's thinking about. That's what I want to talk about today. I want to tell you about something that I've been thinking about, especially over the last couple of weeks, because I have spent a whole lot of time in church. I grew up in church, and obviously I'm a pastor, so I work at a church, and I have read the Christmas story hundreds of times. And then this Christmas, I was reading the Christmas story again, and something hit me a little bit different, maybe even something I haven't even really seen or thought about before. And if you're a Christian, you may get this too, because you get it. I mean, you can read a verse, 100 times, and then you read it the 101st time, and then all of a sudden just something hits you, something stands out, and you can't even really explain it, but it just kind of happens like that. And Luke, who's one of the gospel writers, he tells us the story of Christmas. And even in his first chapter, he tells us the story before the story of Christmas. He starts leaning in and gives us kind of the background of the story. We know where Christmas leads. It leads to the birth of this baby who we believe to be the Son of God. But even before that, Luke begins to tell us some of the backstory. And this is where I saw something this year that it just got me thinking about some things. And I was just wondering if it got me thinking that maybe it would get you thinking. And I have found it to be helpful for me, so maybe it would be helpful for you. And so here's the verse. This is Luke chapter 1, starting in verse 26. And here's what it says. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, and Elizabeth, there's a whole other story there, but Elizabeth was a relative of Mary, and Elizabeth got pregnant, which was a miracle because she was in her 80s. And so there's a whole other story there. But anyways, it keeps going. It says this, that God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Now, again, verse 28, I'm just telling you, I've read verse 28 hundreds of times. I've been in church, 20 plus years. I've heard other pastors talk about this and read these verses. But again, just a couple of months ago, we're getting ready for, our Christmas Eve services, and I'm reading this, and we're looking at it, and I go, man, there's just something there. I've not really thought about it before. So just look at it again. This is verse 28, where of all the things that the angel could say to Mary, of all the kind of, greetings he could give, and this is what he says. Okay, this is what Gabriel says to Mary. He says this, "Greetings, you who are highly favored." There's so much, else going on in the story, and I get it, and there might even be more important things in the story, but there's just this one phrase here. I don't know. I just kept looking at it and go, man, isn't that interesting? Of all the things that Gabriel could say, he looks at Mary and he says, look, you are highly favored, meaning that there was something about this young girl who lived in a town that nobody even really knew about or cared about, but when God looked at her, God said, oh, this is a girl who I highly favor, or my favor rests on. And so then it got me thinking, because of the word favor, and it got me thinking this question. And this Christmas, maybe it's a question you want to ask too, but does God have favorites? Does he have favorites? Because if he does, that's a very interesting conversation, because then you could either be his favorite or not, right? So I started thinking, well, does God, does he have favors? And to be honest, before this Christmas, I never really thought about it much, but it would kind of make sense, right? Because you have favorites and I have favorites, and if God created us and And we were created in his likeness and in his image, and it would make sense that God probably has favorites too. Like let me just tell you some of my favorites, because this is just natural. All of us have favorites, and here's the kind of the cool thing. My favorites may not even be your favorites, or maybe they are, right? But if you were like hanging out with me and you're like, Matt, what's your favorite chicken sandwich, I'd be like, Chick-fil-A. That's easy. I mean, hey, this is a Chick-fil-A church, okay? We just love Chick-fil-A. Now, let me tell you something. That spicy chicken sandwich at Popeyes, I see you, okay? I see you. You're doing good things. But if you ask me, Matt, what's your favorite chicken sandwich? Without a doubt, I'd say, it's Chick-fil-A. Or if you said, and if you're part of our church, you already know this, but if you're like, Matt, what's your favorite candy? All of us have different, favorites. And I'd tell, oh, my favorite candy is Butterfinger, I've been talking about that for 8 years here, and there's kids, no joke, there's kids at Halloween who tithe their candy, and they show up, and they give me all their Butterfingers every year, And I say, your sins are forgiven, all right? It's my favorite. It may not be your favorite, right? But it's my favorite. I don't know why. I just like Butterfinger. Or if you're like, yo, Matt, what's your favorite topping at pizza, on pizza, right? Now I wouldn't say ham and pineapple, all right? It's there, it's in the top 10, but it's not my favorite. My favorite, and this is it's mushrooms, okay? It's mushrooms. The mushrooms is my favorite. I can't even tell you why. If you're like, hey, why is it your favorite? I don't know. I don't know why. It's just my favorite topping on pizza. Or if you're like, Matt, favorite Christmas movie. It's Christmas. What's your favorite Christmas movie, all right? And some of you are thinking Die Hard. And here's the deal. Die Hard is a Christmas movie, hot take, okay? In fact, I saw a poll this week that said Die Hard is the number 2 favorite Christmas movie in America. And that's good, all right? That's not my top. My top is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's my top, okay? That's right. It's my favorite. I mean, we have Christmas tradition in my house. My wife and I, we get some eggnog. We watch that every year. It's just one of my favorites. Or if you ask me, if you said, Matt, who's your favorite quarterback? Are you okay? Are you okay right now? Look, if you're like, hey, Matt, all time, who's your favorite quarterback? Or, I'd probably say this guy, probably Peyton Manning. I'd probably say Peyton Manning, Yeah. Depressed Bronco fans in here, What do you want for Christmas? I know. Okay, so anyways, here's the deal. We all have favorites. I have favorites, you have favorites. And so, it doesn't make sense. And like, what about God? Does God have favorites? Does he have favorites? And if he does, then how do you really know, like, if you're his favorite? Because when we talk about this idea of favor, like in our country, a lot of times when people talk about favor, it's the idea of like health and wealth, I mean, maybe you have too. I've heard pastors, talk about the favor of God, and it's always kind of tied to this idea of health and wealth. And if that's the case, and most of us in here are doing pretty good on God's favorites list, because my guess is most of you drove in a car to get here, which in the context of the world's wealth, that's one of the filters you have to go through if you have a car or not. I mean, even a lot of you have a house for your car. I mean, you park your car inside a house, so you're doing really good. And my guess is most of you have eaten food today, right? Yeah, okay. Yep, you've eaten food. And as far as I can tell, most of you wearing clothes, so good job. You know what I'm saying? Like, most of you in this room, you're pretty wealthy in the context of the world's wealth, and most of you here, today are doing pretty well in the health department. Like, you're pretty healthy and you're pretty wealthy. So is that the filter for God's favor? If you're just healthy and wealthy, and if you want to know if you have the favor of God on you, then you got to have money and you've got to have great health. Is that how it works? Is that how it works? But then it leads me to this question. Well, what if you don't? What about the people in this world who don't have a lot of money? And what about the people this year who struggled with their health? Does that mean that God's favor is not on them here? This is a true story. A year ago, this day, it would have been early in the morning, this morning at about 2 a.m. I got a phone call from one of my friends. And I was sleeping, and so I didn't pick up, and I actually didn't talk to him until about 4:30 that morning. But at 2 a.m., he called me. And here's what he said. Matt, I don't know what to tell you, but she's gone. And he begins to talk in this voicemail, and his wife, who was not very old at all, suddenly just passed away in the middle of the night. And so what does that mean, for him? If favor means health and wealth, does that mean that his wife just wasn't one of God's favorites? It's interesting because when you get into the Christmas story, we have this tension. of a young lady who lived in a town 2,000 years ago who God showed up in her life through an angel and looked at her and said, listen, you just got to know this. You are highly favored. And yet what you'll find in the story is that Mary isn't wealthy. She might be healthy, but she's not wealthy. Talked about this last week. She's a nobody from nowhere. In fact, when the rumors got out that the Son of God actually grew up, he was born in Bethlehem, but he'll grow up in Nazareth, where Mary's from. There's a lot of people that have a lot of trouble believing that to be true. There's New Testament writers who write the stories about people who find out about that and they go, there's just no way. Nothing good could ever come from Nazareth. So we have this tension about, this favor of God, and yet Mary is considered to be highly favored. And so if you ask the question, does God have favorites? The answer would be yes. But here's the thing. God's favorites are not always the people you might think. Again, look at the verse. This is, again, verse 28. It says, look, the angel of the Lord, and said, greetings, you who are highly favored. Just shows up. Mary, you're highly favored. The Lord is with you. And Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greetings this might be. Then verse 30, but the angel said to her, Mary, don't be afraid. You have found, and again, he doubles down. You have found favor. You have found favor with God. So apparently God has favorites, and Mary is one of them. And this angel said that Mary was highly favored. And here's the thing, when you go through, the rest of the scriptures in the Bible, you'll find this idea of God's favorites throughout, Old Testament scriptures, New Testament scriptures, all kind of characters in the scriptures that God says that you are my favorite, you are highly favored. And when you start trying to figure out, okay, what do all these people have in common? They really don't have a whole lot in common. They come from different backgrounds, different ethnicity, different times of history, different levels of wealth. But when you look at it, when you look at all these characters who God says, you are my favorite, you're highly favored, or my favor rests upon you, here's what you'll find, that somewhere in the context of the story, they're also considered to be a child of God. Like God looks at them and you get this idea that he's kind of the father and these are his kids. It kind of helps us a little bit understand how maybe you and I could get into the favorites list of God. But this idea of favor, there's a misconception in our culture, though. Because our culture kind of says, you can only have one favorite, right? What's your favorite? You can't really say one thing. There might be a second or third or fourth place, but there's really only one favorite. But I would argue that's not actually true. You can have actually multiple favorites. I'll prove it. Look at this picture. These are my 4 kids, okay? They're in this service right now. I'm about to embarrass all of them, okay? So these are my four girls. And if you asked me, Matt, which one is your favorite? You know what I'd say? Depends on the day. I'm just kidding. No, you know what I'd say? Matt, you have 4 girls, you have 4 beautiful girls. Which one is your favorite? You know what I'd say? Well, all of them, right? All of them are my favorite. I'll prove it to you. Raya, she's our oldest. She's in the top right there. She's our oldest, and we love her so much. She's been the pace setter for all of our girls. She's out front. She's leading the way. Couldn't be more proud of her. She attacks life hard. She gets after it. This year she's going to graduate from high school as a junior. She just gets after it. She's incredibly smart. She's beautiful. She's a hard worker. She also talks a lot. You know what I mean? She's my favorite, And there's Lorelai. She's our second oldest, and Lorelai, she is so compassionate. She's kind. She's the most introverted of all of our girls. I'm just telling you, she's got a huge heart. She loves old people in the house. She loves you. She wants to grow up and just work with old people. That's what she wants to do. She's a lover of people. She's my favorite. She's my favorite. Then you got Nora. Nora, she's bold and a little spicy, She's probably the most socially adept of all of our girls. She's witty. She loves music. I also think one day, she could be a pastor. I see a lot of me in her. She's my favorite. Then you have Cadence. She's the baby of the family. She's very sweet. She's smart. She's cuddly. She's funny. She loves bunnies and a good dad's joke. She's definitely my favorite. See, here's the thing. Relationships kind of help us understand this idea of favor. Those are all my kids. So here's how this works. My favor rests on all of them. Because they're my kids, they're all my favorites. And I wonder this Christmas if the reminder is the same is true for God, that all of his children are his favorites. And here's why. Because they're his kids. It would be interesting, if there was a conversation up in heaven, an angel comes to God and he's like, hey, 8 billion people in the world, God, who's your favorite? And he's looking down, he's like, oh, it's got to be Matt. Look at him, The angel's like, really? He's like, yeah, I love that guy. I'm like, why? Why would you pick him? He goes, I get it. He's just my favorite. He's my kid. And if you're a follower of Jesus in here, he does the same for you. Looks at you and goes, yeah, Matt's definitely my favorite. And then also, oh man, also, I got to tell you about so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And the angel's like, I said, who's your favorite? He goes, I know, but listen, they're all my favorite. Because they're all my kids. And to understand it a little bit more, I've got this story. This has to do with Nora. She's our third oldest. And growing up, Nora, we would always joke like we would lose her the easiest. I mean, Nora knew no stranger, and she was full of energy. She would climb stuff. You'd walk in the living room. She's on the mantle. It's amazing she hasn't broken a bone yet. That was always a joke. She can be the first one that breaks her bone. But anyway, she had the most energy, and so because of that, she'd tend to get in trouble a lot, And I come home from work sometimes, and I'd check in with my wife Vanessa and be like, how was the day? She'd be like, Nora. And I was like, okay, So she found herself in timeout quite a bit. And I'll never forget this, because this just helps me understand God's love for me and hopefully for you. And because this is this idea of grace. We talk about grace a lot as a church, and grace is this idea. It's like God's, unmerited favor towards you. It's like he can't help himself. He just loves you. He has to. This is the idea of grace, meaning that you and I can't do anything to receive it. He just gives it. And as a dad, it's helped me understand this more, especially with Nora, because I remember this story, and I've told this before. If you're part of our church, you've heard this before. But now, there's just one time when Nora, she just, little tyke, and came home from work, and Vanessa said, yeah, it's a tough day for Nora. She's in timeout quite a bit. And so I remember that night, going up and tucking Nora into bed, and we had this routine, we would pray and maybe read a Bible story. And then, as a dad, I would always tell my girls, hey, I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And that night, for whatever reason, I also said, Nora, I love you, and I'm proud of you. And she looked at me, I'll never forget it. She looked at me and she said, why? Because she knew what kind of day she had. And I knew what kind of day she had. And so she's in bed and she's trying to figure out why. Because I haven't behaved. I didn't listen to Mom. Why in the world would you love me? And why would you be proud of me? That's what she's trying to reason out in her brain. And this is why I said to her, Nora, I love you and I'm proud of you, not because of, you misbehaved today. I love you because you are my kid. That's grace. See, you can't earn my love. You can't buy it. You can just receive it. You can just find it. And this is the idea of being God's favorite. This is grace that he loves us. And some of us fall in the trap. We're trying to earn it, and we're trying to buy it. And God says, no, it's a gift. All you have to do is receive it. It's grace. You just take it. It's for you. And it feels strange because it feels like you should do something for it. And yet because God is our Father and you are his kid, he just gives it to you. And the angel said to Mary, look, Mary, you have found favor with God. It's a reminder in the Christmas story that God's grace doesn't show up and then, disappear. It's always there. And it's always available. But here's the deal. It must be found. You must acknowledge it. You need to receive it. To find grace, you got to understand who Jesus is. This is why the Christmas story is such a big deal. Now, who is Jesus? Well, we just believe he's the Son of God who came down to this earth 2,000 years ago. And what did he do? Well, he did something incredible. He lived on this earth for 33 years, and then he was crucified on a cross because he said he was going to give his life for yours as a ransom for your sin and my sin, our mistakes. And then if you believe the story of Easter, 3 days later, he comes back from the dead. And for those of you who believe in that, and it has changed your life. I believe in it, and it's changed my life. And yet, here's the tension of being God's favorite, because there's some traps in this. And I've run into this all the time with people who believe in God and people who don't believe in God. But there's two things I've learned about faith that are also in this story when it comes to being God's favorite. And here's the first one. That just because you're God's favorite, and just because you have faith doesn't mean that we don't have questions. Check it out. This is in the Christmas story. Because sometimes life just doesn't make sense. And I'm sure you've lived in some of those seasons of life. But back in Luke chapter 1, starting in verse 31, it says this. Gabriel says to Mary, "Look, Mary, you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you're to call him Jesus, and he will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever, and his kingdom will never end." Now here comes the question. And again, remember that Mary is highly favored. Verse 34, Mary says, "Well, how will this be, since I am a virgin?" That's a great story, angel, but I'm not sure if that's going to work. Because Mary knows how babies are made, and so do you. And virgins don't have babies. Mary is highly favored, but she's got questions about God's plan. Verse 35, the angel said, "The Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you, and so the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Your friend Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she, who was said to be unable to conceive in her 6th month, for no word from God will ever fail." So Mary says, "Okay, listen, God, I know I'm your favorite, but I still got questions. I don't know how this is all going to work." And yet, look eventually her response back to the angel. After all the angel explains, then it says this, verse 38, Mary says, "I'm the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled." Then the angel left her. Mary had questions, but she also believed. Meaning you can believe and still have questions. You can be favored and still not know it all. You can have questions about life and still have faith. Here's the second thing I'm reminded of in the Christmas story, that faith doesn't mean we're going to have a perfect life. There's some people who will preach that, but that just isn't true. I mean, think about it. Mary, who's highly favored, will become a social outcast because she got pregnant while she was engaged to her soon-to-be husband. No one believed her in her town. And if you were there, you wouldn't have believed her either. I mean, even Joseph didn't believe her until the angel showed up and chatted with him. Then, when Mary was 9 months pregnant, she had to travel 80 miles on a donkey to Bethlehem. 80 miles on a donkey, 9 months pregnant. Sound fun to you? I wonder if Mary, while taking that 8 to 10 day trip, was like, "God, are you serious right now?" She gives birth surrounded by a bunch of animals. Then, after Jesus is born, she flees to Egypt to keep her son from being murdered by Herod. Then, when Jesus is in his late teens or early 20s, we don't know the exact date, but Mary's husband, Joseph, dies. So now Mary is a single mom raising the Son of God. No big deal, you know. Jesus grows up and all kind of craziness ensues, and he decides to leave the family business. Doesn't want to be a carpenter anymore. He becomes a preacher, and he's traveling the countryside. He's healing people. He's casting out demons. He's going against all kinds of tradition. In fact, he starts doing things that freaks out his mom. Mary goes and finds him one time. She's so scared, and she's trying to urge him, just come back home, you know. Jesus, just be normal. Come home, be a carpenter, and live your life. And she's so worried because she thinks Jesus is literally losing his mind. And don't forget this, Mary who is highly favored, by the way, is sitting there at the foot of the cross, watching her son die. Trusting God's plan or being highly favored by God doesn't guarantee you an easy life. But here's what I've learned, and I think if Mary was here, this is what she would tell you. It can lead to a meaningful life. In fact, if Mary was here, wouldn't that be cool if I just brought her out? Mary, why don't you come out here? We got some questions, you know? If Mary was here, here's one of the questions. I was thinking, if I could ask a question, what would it be? Over the last couple of weeks, here's what I thought. This is the question I'd ask. I'd ask this. Mary, what was more difficult to believe? That you would have a baby whose father was God, or that this baby would one day need to die for the sins of the world? See, you can be highly favored by God, but you just got to know it won't always go the way that you think it will in life. You can be highly favored and yet not live an easy life. But you can choose to live a meaningful life. And if Mary was here and I got to ask her that question, I think she'd say something like this. Matt, yeah, for sure, I had a lot of doubts and questions. But here's what I learned, that in my life, a meaningful life is always better than a comfortable life. Life is tough. It doesn't always go your way. But Christmas, 2,000 years ago, I'm just telling you, it changed the game. Because Christmas, here's what it does. It gives us the origin story of Jesus. And just about everything that you know and I know about God, we know because of the life of Jesus. I mean, Jesus says this over and over again. If you want to know what God's like, then you should listen to what I say. And you should watch how I live. And here's what Jesus says, that if you believe in God, then you are one of his kids. Luke chapter 2, verse 19. It's right in the middle of the whole Christmas story, you know? It just says this, but Mary, she just got visited by shepherds. She didn't even know who they are, just random people showing up, bringing her newborn baby gifts. It says, but Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. She took it all in. She took it all in. And if she was here, I think she'd tell you, Matt, it was all worth it. Didn't go how I thought. But it was a crazy story. If you were just hanging out with Mary, Mary, tell me the story again. You're having coffee with her, and she'd say, this is wild. But I was like 15, I was hanging out in Nazareth, and an angel showed up, And he just said I was highly favored. I didn't even know that, but God did. And I guess the only reason why I was highly favored because I was his kid. I was his daughter. And I believed in him. And he led me on an incredible journey that wasn't easy, but it was meaningful. It was meaningful. And there was highs and there was lows. But if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it. I'd do it. Interesting, at the foot of the cross, Mary's there. Think about this dynamic. Her boy, who's now 33, she raised faithfully and loved, just like moms in the room. Interesting, in that moment, Jesus, who's also God, even looks down at other people at the cross and says, this is my mom. Take care of her. Take care of her. But now this is what I got to do, And you've got a mom who has faithfully served her son, and now the son is going to faithfully serve his Father in heaven. And it changed the game forever. I think it's the most important thing. Many people in here think it's the most important thing. That even when life doesn't go the way you think it should, we stay with God. And even when we have questions, we hang with Jesus. Because he's the author and perfecter of faith. It's the way to a meaningful life. I got to tell you this is so cool. I told you a year ago, one of my friends, good friends, whose wife passed away this day, 2,000 years ago. I remember being in this service, just, wow, God, it's Christmas Eve, This family, they have three children. So I got up this morning and I texted my friend, said, dude, I'm thinking about you, praying for you. It's been a year. I've met with him several times throughout the year. He knows I'm in his corner. I love him. And he said, thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. And then he said something I'm just telling you, I didn't see coming. He goes, can you do me a favor? I said, yeah, anything, dude. What do you want? I'm in. What do you need? He said, when you're teaching at Christmas Eve services today, make sure, just think about this for a sec. It's the anniversary of his wife's death. He said, make sure you tell him about the most important thing. Give him Jesus. I was just like, wow, I didn't see that coming. Of all the places that he could be, life is not going his way. And I'm telling you, he's got a million questions for God. And on this Christmas Eve, on the anniversary of his wife's death, he goes, Matt, the most important thing is Jesus. So as a church and as a pastor, here's what I want to tell you. The most important thing is Jesus. You can have questions and still follow Jesus. And life won't always be easy, and yet you can still follow Jesus. And if you will trust him and follow him and believe him, then God will look at you and say, you are my kid. And you are highly favored. And he'll be with you from this day till your last. Let's do this. Let's stand together. I know you want to light some candles. Let's stand together. Let me pray for you. Then we're going to light some candles and sing some songs. And can I just tell you this? Isn't there something about this moment when we light candles together that just, as we dim the lights and we get the glow from the fire, there's just something about this moment, like for the next 3 to 5 minutes, that even though there's craziness in the world and you've got your own personal anxieties and maybe worries and fears, but you just know it. There's something about this moment that it just seems like all is right. And I just want to tell you that if you don't, believe in God, you should. Because he'll change your life just like he's changed mine. And here's what I've learned, that if you want access, to live more of a life, just like you're about to live in the next 3 to 5 minutes, I'm telling you, it's possible. And it has everything to do with a baby that was born 2,000 years ago. Let me pray for you. Father, on this Christmas Eve, we thank you for the reminder that nothing and nobody loves us more than you. In fact, you love us so much that you initiated this plan that we call Christmas, that you would send your son down to this earth to live and to breathe and to die for my sin and the world's sin. And for those of us who will trust in you, put our faith in you, you call us your sons and daughters. So remind us again this Christmas Eve, and encourage maybe somebody in the room who has yet to see you in all your fullness, that you are trustworthy. And your grace is not just for some, it's a gift for all. And to those who receive, we just believe one day we'll spend eternity with you. We love you. Thank you for the reminder of the story again. And we pray all this in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen.
Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from thy holy face. With the dawn of redeeming grace, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth, Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is
Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him, Christ the Lord. For you alone are worthy. For you alone are worthy. For you alone are worthy. Christ the Lord. Christ the Lord. We'll give you all the glory. We'll give you all the glory. We'll give you all the glory. Christ the Lord.
Sing, "Oh Come, Let Us Adore Him" one more time.
Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, let us adore Him. Christ the Lord.
Thanks again for hanging out with us on this Christmas Eve. The buckets on the way out are for the offering. The baskets is for your candle. I hope you know God loves you. From our Rocky family to yours, Merry Christmas.